Welcome to New Creations Counseling. Today we have a special guest, and your name is
My name is Stephanie.
Stephanie. What's your last name?
My name is Stephanie Santos. Well, Guevara. Married, last name Guevara.
Okay, okay. And do you want to share a little bit about yourself? What do you do? What do you work with?
So I am 31 years old. I am a substance abuse counselor. I've been working in the field for it'll be 10 years this year.
Mhm.
Um, I started off as an administrative assistant and then started counseling in 2018 for substance abuse with adults and adolescents. My strongest points are adolescents and young adults. Um, I'm actually currently waiting to start again school so that I could get my master's in mental health counseling. I am a worship leader. I'm a youth leader. I do a little bit of everything.
Awesome, awesome. That is so great because today we're going to be touching on substance abuse. And I think that today it would be a good day to start focusing on adolescents and children because now it's not only adolescents. Right now we have children as young as 9, 10 years old that are being affected by this tragedy situation, that we encounter every day. So, I'm just going to ask you a few questions so you can share a little bit more about the encounters that you've had or experiences that you may, have to go through and how people overcame those things. And just so we can find a way of help people that are going to be listening to our video.
Okay.
So what has been the biggest challenge for you working in that field?
Oh man. Working with substance abuse alone is challenging because you're dealing with a lot of emotions, you're dealing with a lot of pain. And I think when you're working with people who are in pain, it becomes difficult. It becomes challenging because it's sometimes hard, to be able to reach the person because sometimes the person is not ready to start the changes. Sometimes they're forced to do it, especially if they're like in a judicial way, if they're like on probation, drug court, or DIFIS, or they have cases like that, it becomes challenging. However, when they start, their their perspective on addiction changes because they start seeing that there is a problem. They start believing that they can get out of it. But it all depends basically on the person. It's case by case, because then we have people who are ready and then there's people who aren't. So the
Right,
most challenging thing is when they're not ready.
right. So pretty much we will be able to say that addiction is just the symptoms of the main problem, right? Usually you're touching on addiction. You might look at a child that is coming into your office and looking for help because like you said, they probably just came out of juvenile prison and now they have to engage these things and you're thinking I'm only dealing with an addiction, but then again, that's just what we can see, right? As counselors, we know that whatever we see from the outside has nothing to do with what we're going to touch in the inside, right? We want to deal with the root of the problem. And unfortunately, right, we know that the root of the problems of any problem is always an internal conflict that we may encounter. What has been one after dealing with the addiction, right? Because I'm sure that you have like a system and a program where you start to dig. What has been one of the biggest challenge for the counselee that drove the child into an addiction?
It depends. It could be a divorce. It could be self-esteem. It could be trauma. It could be abandonment. It could
Mhm.
be, dealing with bullying, mental health struggles, self-image. Um, a lot of family dysfunction is a big one too. Um, Abuse, um, under or over controlling parents.
Mhm.
It could be a lot of things. But what I've seen mainly is a lot of family dysfunction, parents not being present. If we're talking about teens and adolescents, that's what we've seen, a lot of bullying, and low self-esteem. are
Right.
the biggest things. But nowadays, right now, I feel like peer pressure has been the biggest issue because
Yes.
it's so accessible right now.
Mm.
Especially now that marijuana is legal in the state of New Jersey. Um, Although there are rules and regulations, of course, when it comes to a teenager, it is still so accessible to the teens because now they're using it in different forms,
Right.
which is vaping. It's so easy to get a THC cart. You could just go to a gas station and buy it now. They don't
Mm.
ask for IDs. They have it in forms of edibles, which is candy. It looks like an actual candy wrapper, so you don't know. Um, Friends are just passing it around in school. That's the one thing that we've been seeing a lot. And like even when school counselors reach out to us, they're like, "Hey, what can we do? We need help. Like we don't know what else to do because it's just everywhere. How can we control it?" Um, and it's hard because sometimes the parents are not present, or their parents don't know because obviously they're either single parents or they're just working a lot because obviously with the economy means I have to work a little bit more so that I can be able to afford life in itself. So which means the kids are probably home alone,
Mhm.
um, and nobody knows what the kid is doing, you know?
Right. Right. No, absolutely. You said something very important at the beginning when you started explaining a little bit that, sometimes they're forced to come, right? And the very first thing that we look for is the oneness, right? The understanding and knowing that acceptance is the number one step that you gotta have. And sometimes most of the children that come is because their parents are forcing them, or
Mhm.
like you said, it has to be a DIFA situation or a situation where they probably don't even think it's a problem because again, it's so accessible. Everybody's doing it. This is the normal thing to do, not understanding that they're just falling into a slippery slope that they might never come out of there, right? Because we know that it can start off as small as ADHD medication that they abused when they were growing up, right?
Right.
Sometimes we think
That's actually a
drugs,
big thing.
yeah, we sometimes we think that drugs is just street drug,
Mhm.
but and to mention a little bit about temperaments, this is why it's so important to know temperaments
Mhm.
when with your children, because each temperament has a level of addiction. So, for example, one of the temperaments that has the highest risk of becoming addictive to anything, and we're talking about any kind of addiction, it's a melancholy because they're overthinkers and they're constantly, just trying to figure things out, and they don't know how to handle pain and situations, so they need to numb themselves, right?
Right.
So imagine bringing a child of an age of 6, 7, 8, and is dealing with ADHD.
Mhm.
It's very important for you to know your child, to know what kind of substance you're going to engage him with,
Exactly.
right? Because moving on from there, it's like, okay, now I'm older. This is not doing anything for me. What am I trying next?
Mhm. Yeah,
Right.
I do
And
believe that it starts at at a young age, especially children with ADHD. Like that's a big topic maybe for another day because I know some parents may not agree. And we can agree to disagree
yeah,
when it comes to that. But I personally feel like prescribing a child with ADHD medication at such a young age, because if you want to get if you want to get into the science part in the brain, like your frontal lobe doesn't develop until you're 25 for a female, 28 for a male. So
yes.
using substances stops that development, you
Hmm.
know. So it's going to be hard for them to be able to function at one point in their life because they're so used to the medication. That's
Right.
why, like me personally, like if you're seeking mental health treatment and you want medication, right? Um, you cannot just get medication. You have to have therapy with it because if you're not dealing with the actual problem and why you came in the first place, then
Right.
the medication is never going to take its course and you're just going to get addicted to the medication.
Absolutely. And under like you said, understanding that we also there's dopamines,
So
chemicals in our brains, right, that we naturally release, which pretty much is like the happy chemical that we have
yeah,
in our brain.
reward system.
Yeah. So the moment that we start engaging even in alcohol, right, in those the dopamine starts to produce a little bit more and stronger, then you get hooked on that, right? It's like you want to feel that feeling often because you feel happy or because you feel numb or whatever the case may be. So just being careful that anything that is, whether a prescription drug or a sleeping pill or just any kind of drugs, you can become addictive if you don't know how to handle it, right? But going back to the youth, because we see it everywhere. I mean, it's like so infectious, like it's
Yeah.
everywhere. Everyone is doing, everything is normal. Like you said, that there's so many different ways of how to get it and how to consume it, from brownies and candies and all these things that they have access to it, right? How would you think that this would bring more of a challenge in the house? How can parents, what would you tell a parent on how to handle this situation when it's just starting?
I think that I think one of the biggest things is when a parent finds out, the first thing is, you know, obviously punishment comes in. And I do agree with punishing your child because obviously, but I think that also, I mean, is bringing discipline into the home. Why did they start smoking? Is having a conversation with them first
Yes.
before, you have to, not only as a therapist you have to assess, but as a parent you have to assess what's going on in the home. What patterns have you been seeing with your child when they come home? I think one of the biggest things is to know if your child is using or not is their sleeping patterns. It's a big thing, especially with marijuana. I've seen personally how kids come home and they go straight to sleep. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I've seen how they are losing a lot of weight. How are they losing a lot of weight when they eat? I've seen coming home and like this is also like what parents state a lot and would and from personal experience, um, you come home and you're eating like the whole loaf of bread. Why are you
Right.
eating that whole loaf of bread right now? Like, you
Mm-hmm.
can't be that hungry to eat a whole loaf.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest thing is when their grades start dropping and you start seeing like they're missing up, assignments, when they're spending a lot of time isolated. That's a big one. Because a lot of times you're like, oh no, they're just on their phone or they're just in their room or this or that. But spending too much time away, like they kind of like distance themselves
Mm-hmm.
slowly, little by little. And sometimes, because it's hard to tell sometimes because regular teenage behavior is that, they have hormones, they have a lot, they're figuring themselves out. And it kind of, it's the same thing. But this is where they have to assess where, like even addressing the teen. Why did you start? It's just having a simple conversation. What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And 9 times out of 10, they're going to be scared to tell you
Oh yeah.
because you're the parent, because of your reaction. And as a parent, you're going to be upset, which is
Right.
normal. It's okay to be upset, but it's how your actions after,
Mm-hmm.
because we have seen that parents remove the whole everything from them to where they can't do anything at all, to where and this is like overreacting discipline, which is okay because every parent has their own ways. However, it's just actually having that conversation with them. That's what matters more
Right.
to them, because it's like, okay, like as a teen, it's like I want to know, I want to feel like I can trust you enough to listen to me without overreacting so I could be truthful and honest
Mm-hmm.
about what's been really going on. Um, but at the same time, I'm scared. You
Right.
know? So it's just being patient, giving them that time to be able to trust you and showing them that they could trust you to open up to you. And not telling everybody about what's going on, because that's a big thing, because now they're looking shameful. Oh, well, my kid, did this. Now look at so and so's kid. They're doing that. So now they already feel like the elephant in the room.
Right. Right.
Because they got caught or whatever it is. But definitely, I just think just having that simple conversation with
Yeah,
your child. And, you know, if you're a parent that's struggling, like a single parent that's really struggling to figure it all out because obviously you're working so much and you're trying to stay afloat, it's okay to seek help,
hmm,
you know, and ask someone that you know you can trust how to help you
yeah,
in that stage of life because a lot of times um it's hard, you
yeah,
know, it's hard to manage them with, you know, their teenage feelings. Just I can just imagine if a substance is also added. Um,
absolutely. And I think that as parents, right, we need to realize that it's hard enough to control our own thoughts, emotions, and actions, right? And sometimes we try to control our children, and let's say maybe they're already 17, 18, and they're getting, in that area where I'm ready to leave your house kind of attitude, right? For lack of better words. But just understanding that if we're not able to control them, we should be able to influence them,
that,
right? We should be able to be that person and set the example in the house, right? Because as the parent of a young adult, because now he's a young adult, for me, it has been a challenge to be able to have the control that I had when he was just a little kid, and then the changes came, and I had to really counsel myself as a parent and say, hey, there is so much that I can do from this moment forward. So how can I become an influence to my son? How can I become that example where I know that I'm not gonna, get to him with a critic or a judgment, but I am going to try to influence him in the best way that I can so that he can have trust in me and say, I'm dealing with something. And as a parent, how can I help? Right. And we know that relapse, they happen, right? And that's one of the things that most parents don't understand. And there's a relapse. And I think that that's why what you said about the trust is the number one thing that the child should have with their parents. Because listen, majority of the kids that are already consuming, they don't have a good relationship with their parents. They're either don't even like their parents, or they're afraid of their parents because they have been abusive, right?
mhm.
So now they really don't have anyone to talk to, and they talk to their friends and they're doing the same thing. So they find comfort. And I think that this is one of the reasons why so many young kids are joining gangs, because they find the support in the streets that they can't find at home,
Mhm.
right? So the number one thing, a tip to give a parent is to build the trust and build the consistency of
Present.
being
It's,
in their business,
it's being
Hmm.
present, in a way that they know that you're there for them
Yeah.
because you know that's what happens a lot of times. Parents are not present, you know, they're doing their own thing, they're, you know, and listen, I get it, and but it's, you know, your child needs that time. It's just not, you know, you know, because a lot of times the routine is, you know, you're gonna go to work while your kid is in school, you're gonna come home, you're gonna cook dinner, make sure that the house is clean, make sure this and this. But where is that time when you sit down and ask them how was their day,
Yeah.
how was school, anything happened? It starts just by like those simple conversations. Start having dinner again in your dining room table, you
Yeah.
know, because I feel like a lot of, you know, that's already like, I feel like that essence of sitting at the dining like has been lost for a very long time. A lot
Yeah.
of people don't do that anymore, and
Mhm.
just having those moments are special enough for your child to be like, all right, I have her attention for a little bit. Hopefully it gets better where I can find comfort in speaking to my parent again, or speaking about what I'm really feeling because I could see that she's making an effort or he's making an effort to want to know about how my day is really going.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that also one of the things that we don't do enough as parents, I would say, is that we don't check on their friends. Who's your friend? Do you have any new friends? Why did your circle change? Those are like little things and little red
Knowing their
flags that
parents
we can
too,
see. What was that?
and knowing, you know, the friends' parents. Get to know the friends' parents. Who are
Yes.
your kids hanging out with? Because
Yes.
a lot of times, you know, you find, and this is where, you know, sexual abuse happens because you don't stay connected to the parents of your friend, the parents of their friends, and you don't know who you're, who they're hanging out with.
Yes.
What background do they come from? Is that friend also struggling? Because sometimes if it comes from like a peer pressure point, is usually the friend inviting your child to smoke or to drink. So what's going on in that child's house?
Right.
They are constantly smoking or that they're drinking,
Right.
because we've seen that. We've seen where teens are, working in the field, teens cling to alcohol a lot easier because it's in the home
Mm-hmm.
already, you know, um, to where it leads them to smoke. Or
Right.
to smoking it leads them, to building a tolerance to the point where they want to, they want a different high. They
Yeah.
start grabbing pills and
Mhm.
all these things. And nowadays, honestly, you don't even know what you're getting, what the kids, nowadays you're seeing marijuana being laced with fentanyl. You're seeing marijuana being laced with cocaine. That's one of the biggest things now. And it's tough. And the
Yeah.
last thing you ever want is to see that your kid either overdose on that or that, your kid had a bad trip and they psychologically couldn't contain themselves because that
Mhm.
happens too.
Right. Yeah. So one recommendation that, I like to give my parents, the parents when I'm working with them, is that giving your child a chance to know that he or she is not what they do, that what they did was totally different than who they are. That
Exactly.
no matter what you do, you're still my child and I am here to help you, right? Again, we want to teach the parent that helping and enabling is not the same thing, right? If we know that our child is struggling with drug abuse, we're not constantly going to give them money because we know that they're using it. So we are not enabling our children, but we are helping them. Right.
Exactly.
And we have to help them with love, with no critics, with, like I said before, if they're relapsed, instead of telling them, see, it would never work. I mean, they do want to change,
Yeah.
especially when they're letting you know, I want to change, I want help. So if they are seeking for help, it's good for all the parents that are listening to us that are relapsed. It's okay.
Mhm.
A relapse could happen in the process, but you just have to know that it's part of the process and just understanding that we're going to come and help each other out. Do we
Exactly.
have to go to get a therapy, get into a 12 a cognitive behavior therapy that is going to last 12 weeks? If I have to go to to the meetings with my child, I mean, how can we just become part of the restoration? And of course, that we can't separate the mind and the body if we're not dealing with the spiritual side of the addiction, because again, there's roots that are spiritual, right? There's the root of condemnation, there's fear, there's doubt, there are so many things that their spirit may be lacking, right? And then that's something that we as Christians counselors, we incorporate to be able to restore from the inside out. Once their spirit starts to get restored, then their soul and their body starts to align with everything else. Because again, the body needs the natural thing, and we all know that we have chemicals in our brain that need to be taken care of. There are going to be times that some children are going to need medication, but just knowing the side effects of the medication, which most of them cause suicide, right? I mean, when there's children taking antidepressants, they become suicidal. So just asking the questions and just knowing that not every medicine is for any child is very important. So seeking for therapy should always be the number one thing to go to, just
Yeah.
so you want to deal with the root of the cause of that symptom, which is addiction,
Right.
you
And
know?
that a lot of parents should look forward to and understand it's that the process of them when they stop. Know that there are withdrawal symptoms. And
Yes.
withdrawal symptoms for marijuana is it's headaches, agitation, anger. So like if you find your teenager being or like angry or with an attitude, you have to understand that they're going through a process of cleaning their system to where their brain is looking for that dopamine, that reward system to be able, so now they're trying to finding other things. So they feel agitated, they
Yes.
feel, some type of way. So I think that that's one thing that, parents should definitely look into too, and
Mhm.
understand like it's going to take, especially with marijuana, it takes about a month or
Right.
so for them to be able to kind of like get adjusted
Mhm.
to them coming off. With alcohol is a whole different thing, because alcohol, the withdrawal symptoms, sometimes you have to make sure you're in touch with your medical doctor,
Mhm.
or the hospital, or a detox or something like that professionally, because alcohol withdrawal can be deadly.
Yes.
Um, so like, if you do have a child or a teen that is struggling with alcohol and they're drinking every single day, just know that, their withdrawals can be diarrhea, tremors, seizures can happen. So those are things that, you want to be mindful of, when it comes to that process. And like you said, with the whole relapse situation, relapse is part of everything. And it's important to know that they feel supported.
Yeah. So is switching addiction, right? I've seen cases where like a switching addiction may become part of the recovery time. Like let's say if you're dealing with alcohol, drugs, now you might become addicted to sugar because you're trying to find a replacement, or soda or coffee. And again, going back to the temperaments, when you have that addictive temperament, this is why it's so important for you to know if I'm dealing with an addictive temperament, how do I learn how to work with that weakness? Because again, if it's not drugs, it can be anything else. It can be from, let's say, from even pornography. Maybe it might not be a substance, but it may be anything that it could be an addiction. So I mean, this is awesome. I love this. So much information in a little bit of time. I really hope that everybody can get something from it. And just tell us, where can we find you? How can people get in touch with you to have a consultation with you in the future if anyone is dealing with drug addictions, or children that are stepping into this, new thing.
So you can find, so I work at the Passion Care Center in Perth Amboy, which we have an outpatient facility, for adolescents and adults, um, which we provide individual counseling, group therapy, mental health services, medication monitoring, all that. Um, and we're, like I said, we're located in Perth Amboy. We do take a lot of insurances if you want to go that route. Um, if you want something more hands-on individually, you can all email me, at santosstephanie21@gmail.com, or you can find me in Instagram at tenaciously Steph, which is TENACIOUL. Wait, hold on. I think I misspelled that, but it's TENACIOUSLY, Steph, STEF, and Instagram. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to Melissa or to myself. We're here for you. We're here for your kids. Even if you're struggling as a parent, don't be ashamed. It starts with that one yes, and once you get that yes, and that's where your healing starts. So we encourage you to find the help. We encourage you to step out and enter that season of healing for yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for allowing us to have you as a guest speaker at New Creations Counseling. We hope that we can continue to expand, share a little bit more about what we do. We're in the healing and restoring field and calling, right? Because we know that this is more of a calling than anything else. And again, sowing seeds of wellness and just recovery through the process, and just letting people know that they're not the only ones that are going through it, and that there's always hope to recover. There's always hope to change your life and become a better person for yourself and for others. So I thank you so much again.
I
And
mean,
what was that?
I said, thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. Well, thank you guys. You know where you guys can reach me at newcreationscounseling.org. Please reach out to us. Please reach out to me. Write your comments at the bottom. Let me know how this has helped you. If this was something encouraging that is helping you through the process. And if you have any questions, don't, just make sure that you get in contact with us, email us, and just get all the information at the bottom of the video. God bless. Have a good night.